With all the Book 5 craziness, do not forget that we got brand new weapons and refines for update 5.0. We're starting this update cycle off with a bang, and you can grab new weapons for Oliver, Mist, Nowi, and then a new refine for Cavalry Chrom Sealed Falchion. Thanks to the old system, Sealed Falchion is also obtainable by the regular OG Chrom, Lucina, and Masked Marth. You will need to spend 150 Divine Dew to evolve their Awakening Falchion into the Sealed Falchion, and if you want the brand new refine, that's another 200 Divine Dew on top, so it's a very pricey investment. We'll be talking about if that investment is worth it for all of these new refines, and also discuss some build ideas and or new playstyles.
Let's tread carefully. Here.
You just witnessed Oliver's new Tome of Favors, and if that didn't sell you on the weapon, then I don't know what will. Oliver is a blue mage with low speed and defense and okay HP attack and res. Not only is he kind of a meme from the main games, but he's not exactly a popular pick because of how good he is as a unit in Fae. Most players who invest in Oliver are doing it for the heck of it, and that full-on meme animation for the Tome of Favors pretty much encompasses that to the fullest. For this 14-9 Tome, if Oliver fights a foe who does not use beast damage, he gains +5 attack and res and restores 7 HP after combat. The base effect of this weapon is pretty simple and works on everyone except beast units. If you do want to spend 200 Divine Dew on the glorious mustached man, then Oliver can move to a space adjacent to a beast ally that can equip Singer Dance. If Oliver is within 3 spaces of beast allies who can equip Singer Dance, then he gets another +5 attack and res. Now, if it wasn't obvious, Tome of Favors even has a meme-ish ability, although if you want to be more professional about it, you could say it's very niche. There were only 3 units in the game who are beast units that are dancers, and they are the 3 Heron siblings, Rayson, Leanne, and Grim Raphael. If you didn't play the Telias games, basically Oliver is obsessed with the beauty of the Herons and even purchased Rayson during Path of Radiance. Tome of Favors is a total callback to this obsession, and Oliver can literally warp to any of the Herons at any point in time. Just for being near them, he gets a simple +5 attack and resistance, and in total, +10 attack and res with a 7 HP heal after combat isn't too bad if you just want to tank mages. Now, unless you want to do something really wild with this build, Oliver will mainly be relegated to a defensive quicker post playstyle. If you want to kill stuff in one round, he could pull off some offensive moves thanks to the warping ability, but don't expect the man to double at all. If you want some player phase power, then I think Oliver will want to stick with either bond skills or the new Unity A skills. If you want him to fight archers and dagger users, then you're gonna need to want to get a lot of extra defense because he's very slow, so he's gonna get doubled often. Honestly, you could go full on mage tank since that would be easier to make work, but obviously it makes Oliver even more niche than he is. For some other defense oriented builds, you could go the close foil route. You could use the solo secret seals since Oliver doesn't need to be right next to the Herons to get his extra stats. If you want ease of use, then the Unity A skills let Oliver be 1 or 2 spaces away, and that's a nice compromise versus the solo or bond choice. Now, something to keep in mind is that if Oliver stays within 2 spaces of Rayson or Leanne, he not only heals 7 HP after every fight, but on the next player phase, their unique weapons are also going to heal Oliver for another 7 HP. Maybe that's something you can actually take advantage of for a strategy, although if Oliver is too close, he blocks their transformation, so be careful about that. For the most part, if you want to stack defense, you're going to need to invest a lot, and if you just want to tank mages, then ideally I think you'll want a tier 3 dual stance so Oliver can at least get guard to not get blown up by fast mage specials. I don't really think Tome of Favors is worth enough to start using Oliver at this point, but if you enjoy a good meme or you're just willing to spend a lot of premium skills, then sure, you can make it work. Should be obvious, but if you're going to use Oliver, you pretty much have to plan to have Rayson or his siblings on the team. Next up we have Mist, who got Elena's staff. Elena is the mother of Ike and Mist, and if you want to know more, I'll leave that research up to you. Elena's staff has 14 might, and this is a pretty neat weapon. It grants a flat +3 resistance to Mist, and comes with Dowling Staff so foes cannot counterattack. At the start of the turn, Mist inflicts -7 attack and speed on the nearest foes within 4 spaces through their next actions. Additionally, after combat, if Mist attacked, she inflicts -7 attack and speed on the target and foes within 2 spaces. Basically, Elena's staff combines the Fear Plus and Slow Plus staffs for a -7 attack and speed debuff combo. What's even better is that Mist emits a debuff on the closest enemy within 4 spaces, so she doesn't even need to attack to help the team if you can position correctly. For a healer, this is really good, and you can see that from Mist's stats. She's not exactly the best offensive healer, although feel free to try and make it work. Now, for the unique refine, Elena's staff adds the panic status to the mix, so she can also inflict panic on the nearest foes within 4 spaces, and if she attacks, she spreads an AoE panic. With the special upgrade, Mist inflicts attack attack, speed, and panic debuffs just by standing in place. If she attacks, she inflicts those same debuffs in a 2-space AoE. For a 5-star healer that pity broke many a player, this is a pretty good weapon. Refine. To be honest, you don't even need to pick up the Refine because a -7 attack and speed debuff is pretty sweet. Mist can stand in the back, and if enemies are approaching, she can help your frontline take out the nearest target. One of the main issues with the generic staff weapons is that they require the healer to make an actual attack, so staffs that can support the team without attacking are nice. In the case you do need some extra debuffs, then Elena's staff has Dazzling Staff to protect Mist. Even if you don't intend to invest in Mist, I think this weapon is worth having. For something like Arena Assault, bringing a Mist just for the attack and speed debuffs could be a nice option. While you can turn Mist into a Wrathful Staff user, Elena's staff is clearly more about a traditional support playstyle. You can save the beast slot for something like a Sabotage debuff, and it should be noted that the +3 resistance from Elena's staff is helpful because it will give a neutral Mist 37 resistance. Not bad for activating Sabotage employees, and you can bring multiple employees if you so desire. While Mist will emit her own debuffs at the start of the turn, it only hits the nearest enemies, while a Sabotage or Deploy debuff can tag more enemies for the team. If you don't want to worry about debuff conditions, then any combination of support skills are fine. A speed buff from Speed Tactic or a Joint Drive speed skill would be great with the -7 speed debuff, and Closer Distant Guard are good if you plan to bait enemies to come to you. Wings of Mercy is also good for clutch healing and getting out of trouble, but it would also allow Mist to lay down all of her debuffs and the team can follow up afterwards. If you bring 1 or 2 Savage Blow skills that chip damage on top of -7 attack, -7 speed, and panic is just very annoying. Overall, not many players are going to have super merge that misses because, well, she's a 5-star only healer. Elena's staff is actually a really nice weapon if you just held onto a random Mist that may have pity broken you, since it requires no investment to work. Mist just needs to stand in the back, and if she needs to attack, the weapon comes with Dazzling Staff. Obviously, the Panic Refine is very nice, but it's more of a bonus to an already pretty solid base effect. Next we have Nowi, who is probably one of the most +10 3 to 4 stars in the game. If you played Fae after the weapon refinery got added, you for sure encountered many Nowis in the arena. At the time, her ability to get distant counter via the inherent build Lightning Breath plus Dragonstone made her a really fun unit to use for both PvP and PvE. It took some time, but Nowi finally gets her refined, and her new Dragonstone is the Purifying Breath. This Dragonstone actually only has 14 might compared to the standard 16 might, and its slow special trigger by +1, which means all specials permanently have 1 extra cooldown. These downsides are present because Purifying Breath retains Lightning Breath's distant counter property, and Nowi will be able to counterattack from any range, and she has adaptive damage against ranged units. Some things just don't change, and honestly, I'm surprised they actually kept the penalties that Lightning Breath has. Slower specials suck, especially when specials play such a huge role in Fae, but we can get around that somewhat. Now, if you get the Special Refined upgrade, at the start of combat if Nowi has more than 50% HP, she gains +4 at all stats and neutralizes stat penalties. Pretty simple refine, but dang, that is not bad at all, especially on a distant counter weapon. One of Nowi's best traits compared to her fellow real rarity dragons is that she's super versatile in what stats you can invest in. Her 45 base HP is pretty high, and 34 attack is good with 27 speed, 30 defense, and 27 res all being okay. With +10 merges, that's +4 at all stats, and this refine is another +4 at all stats when above half health. Nowi can take pretty much any boon, and her balanced defenses lets her use distant counter well, especially since DC plus adaptive damage really messes up mages like Oliver who have high resistance stats but low defense. While Purifying Breath will kind of cement that same enemy phase playstyle distant counter users usually have, Nowi can always invest in speed to get some player phase presence. Since she neutralizes stat debuffs, she's going to feel very consistent, and panic won't mess her up as much since she basically never have negative stats. The only time Nowi will actually lose stats is if in-combat debuffs are in play. This is a pretty simple weapon, and if you used Lightning Breath on Nowi before, this is just a straight upgrade. Now for builds, Nowi has so many options. The classic dragon build that was meta back then was Lightning Breath plus Steady Breath plus Quicker Post. Steady Breath is still good for Nowi since she will have slower specials, and Steady Breath just gives so much special cooldown reduction. Nowi needs to stay healthy to keep her refine active, so she will still want some kind of healing, and most people are probably going to stick to using Aether. Because of Steady Breath or any of the Breath A skills, a 5 cooldown Aether isn't too different from a 6 cooldown Aether. Obviously with guard effects in play that may not be the case, but for general gameplay the old classic build would do just fine, especially for PvE content. Now if it comes back, or if you have a spare Hollowing Grima, then obviously you want to upgrade from Quicker Post to Dragon's Ire. It is a superior Quicker Post for dragons, and it has a 50% HP threshold to perfectly match Purifying Breath's refine. After that, you really just want more stats for Nowi. Distant or close defense or any stand sticker steals are fine. Now, my personal bane in Arena back then wasn't the super tanky high defense and res Nowis, but the Nowis that invested in speed, a pretty popular setup, and one that I even used on my Nowi is a plus speed boon, plus if speed refined lightning breath, plus fury, plus Vantage. This set isn't meant for long-term tanking, but rather focused on winning the first encounter and having Vantage to clean up messy fights afterwards. By investing in speed, Nowi's player phase is much stronger because if she can double or avoid getting doubled, then things get messy, and that's where Vantage thrives. We can definitely do a modern take on this mixed phase playstyle with the solo skills because they offer stats for both phases like Fury, and you can still run Vantage if you really want. If you are confident Nowi can hold her own, then a low B skill would be nice as well, and you can use something like Attack or Speed Smoke in the C slot. Because the Refine neutralizes stat penalties and gives a general stat boost, Nowi's focused on speed will probably still find success. Keeping distant counter while having a free A slot is super nice as well. Last, here are just some more skills to consider since Nowi's very versatile. Bonus Doubler is nice because she has distant counter on her weapon and Nowi won't get completely destroyed by panic. She does not counter panic, but it won't send her into negative stats. If you just want a pure enemy phase set with guard, then the tier 3 dual stances are fantastic, again because Nowi has DC already. Any smoke debuffs are solid for tanking multiple enemies in a turn, and no follow-up or no C disrupt are valid options if you need to handle certain enemy types. You could use Wrath, but keep in mind the slower specials does hurt this skill. With her high base HP, Nowi could also bring Panic Ploy for your team. Finally, you can grab Threat and Attack in Res 3. This is mainly used if you expect Nowi to be surrounded or if you expect really messy fights in Arena where enemies and allies are surviving more than one round. This skill is only on Winter Solstice, but Christmas is coming up, so her rerun banner is on the way if you do want it. Overall, Purifying Breath is a great refine if you used Nowi with Lightning Breath previously. The extra stats and neutralizing stat debuffs is super nice for a unit like Nowi who just stacks a ton of everything. Will Nowi make a resurgence like before? Well, there are still a lot of powerful dragon killers out there. For example, you probably don't want to use Nowi for Astral Seasons and Aether Raids because Dressir exists and she's a green mage with dragon effectiveness. There's also Legendary Julia who just has a lot of firepower and a dragon killing tome. Dual Idun and Fae do negate dragon effectiveness weapons for allies, so maybe that could become an actual skill in the future. Regardless, Nowi should still be a lot of fun to use for any general content. Longtime players had many chances to get her, so I'm sure you'll see some floating around. Last we have the Sealed Falchion, which originally comes from Chrom, although I like to call him Cavalry Chrom because he's the only one on horse. You can get this weapon from regular Chrom, Lucina, and Masked Marth, so this is an option for them along with their own Awakening Falchions, which also got refines a long time ago. Now, the Sealed Falchion did get an upgrade to its base effect. It's so effective against dragons and at the start of combat if unit has less than 100% HP, or if a bonus is active on unit, grants plus 5 to all stats during combat. Before you would need to dip under full health to activate the weapon, but now you can get the plus 5 to all stats if you have a field buff or positive status on Chrom. Very nice quality of life update. For the refined ability, at start of combat, if foe has more than 75% HP, grants plus 5 to attack, speed and defense, and foe cannot make a follow-up attack. Another simple refined, Chrom and crew get even more stats and fall prevention if they fight a healthy enemy. This is quite an interesting weapon because everyone now gets plus 10 attack, speed and defense, which can supplement a lot of different builds. Then you can block one follow-up, which naturally is just good for defensive builds, but in general it's a solid ability to have, especially for Lucina and Masked Marth who have less defensive bulk. If you look at base stats, the two Chroms are kinda similar and Lucina and Masked Marth literally have the same stats. The Chroms are slower, but giving them plus 10 speed is really nice for avoiding doubles from middle tier speed enemies. Regular Chrom also has a speed super boon, and he's easy to merge up, so both Chroms can hit the 38 to 39 speed range, which is a huge improvement. For Lucina and Masked Marth, they follow the more traditional fast sword infantry archetype, and plus 10 speed goes a long way when keeping up with power creep. For any newer players, know that Cavalry Chrom and Lucina are 5-star only summonable characters, which makes them much harder to merge up. Regular Chrom's a 3 to 4-star summonable unit, so he's the easiest to get from this bunch. Masked Marth is a heroic grail unit, and for year 1 players, they are by far the cheapest unit to merge to plus 10 because we got so many copies. Masked Marth also can get a boon now, so that's actually pretty sweet if you want to go for max investment. If you want to give Sealed Falchion to OG Chrom, Lucina, or Masked Marth, you must first get it from the weapon refinery for 150 Divine Dew. You then need to spend 200 Divine Dew for the refined upgrade, so it's very expensive. However, I'm willing to say that it's probably worth it because the old Falchion refine is just plus 4 to all stats if adjacent to an ally, and renewal 3. Sealed Falchion opens up a lot of different playstyles and obviously grants more stats potentially. For builds, we'll split things up a bit because Cavalry Chrom obviously can't use infantry skills. I would say that he's definitely not on Eliwood, Blazing Durando level of offensive power, but Sealed Falchion giving +10 attack and speed and defense is super nice for mixed phase sets and just general fighting. Cavalry Chrom can make use of solo skills and lulls to get tons of stats for both phases, and the Follow Prevention kinda gives him an impact ability, so even if he doesn't double on initiations, he can stop the enemy's doubles as well. Obviously this works wonders for a more defensive kit, and if you want, you can still go with quicker posts, since without extra speed perks, Chrom probably is not going to double too many enemies himself. Now, to have Sealed Falchion's base effect ready at full health, you're going to want a field buff, and while teammates can supply that buff, Chrom and crew can use the Rouse C skills. This leads into our next playstyle, which focuses on speed. Ferdinand is a godsend for solo speed focused builds because he has rouse speed and defense, and that is perfect for the double solo skill builds or the close call type builds. Cavalry Chrom can use things like low attack and speed to up his speed advantage, but the 3 infantry swordsmen can go the close call, repel, or spurn route. Lucina and Masked Marth are naturally faster, so they would be happy with the spurn, rouse speed and defense, and speed and res solo seal build. Masked Marth in particular becomes an interesting free to play option for this build because again, they can now get a speed boon, and +10 speed from Sealed Falchion is no joke with +10 merges and dragon flowers. For those with plus speed Chroms, you 100% won with this refine. Who needs bonds when you can now use the rouse and solo combo to stray away from the team, and you can get even more speed than before. The old Falchion had a bond focused playstyle, but Sealed Falchion is a bit more flexible even if you don't run solo skills. Speaking of which, there are definitely a lot more ways to use this weapon effectively. Because you block one follow-up attack, this definitely makes distant counter builds better, and you can tank more effectively, and extra speed is great for some player phase power. Heavy blade and full on attack boosting skills are great, especially for Chrom. If instead you go with a plus attack boon Chrom with merges, and honestly you can just go for a one-shot setup on dragons, maybe use an impact skill with death blow. For Lucina and Masked Marth, Flashing Blade is an option for them, and for everyone, you could just go pure offensive with something like Swift Sparrow. For example, Cavalry Chrom could adopt Reagan's Swift Sparrow and low speed and defense initiation kit, or maybe just go with attack and speed solo instead. Main thing to keep in mind is that for the first encounter, or if you use healing skills, you won't get the +5 tall stats if our sword lords are at full health unless they have a bonus on them. I mentioned rouse speed and defense for self buffing, but if you don't want to split off from the team, then wave buffs are budget options that are on plenty of different units. You can also just get buffed by an ally very easily, and if you want to stay thematic, the Robin's Tactic Tomes do just that. Overall, Sealed Falchion got a pretty solid refine. It's not super offensive or super defensive, but it opens up a lot of different playstyles. The biggest weakness is that Chrom and Lucina have low res, and they only get +5 resistance compared to +10. You may want to invest in more res if you want a more defensive kit. If you are a fan of speed, then this is probably one of the best weapons you can ask for. Lots of positives to work with there. That's going to be it for this update. Very solid batch of refines, and while Oliver has ascended to an even higher tier of memes, they managed to make Mist pretty useful with very little investment. I actually thought they would held back a bit for Nowi, but I think it's because they know a lot of players have plus to Nowis from way back when. As for the Sealed Falchion, I feel like it's another situation where the low rarity units win the most. If you don't have Lucina, you can just use Masked Marth, now with boon potential, and Infantry Chrom has lots of fun builds as well. It's an expensive Divine Duo investment, but if you do like these characters, I do think it's worth it. Let me know your thoughts on these new weapons and refines, and if you plan to use them. I'll see you guys in the next video.